Discovered my wife secretly recruited a coworker to monitor my interactions at work, leaving me feeling violated and adrift. We have been married for 5 years and together for 8. My wife has been jealous of a coworker at my job for some time now. Her name is Heather and she's in her early 20s, tall, pretty. Just observations as I have a pair of eyes. Heather is nice but I don't go out of my way to talk to her. We worked together on a project about 8 months ago, which is when this seems to have started. Heather, 3 other coworkers, and I were assigned to this project, and so for a good month we spent much time together at work. My wife saw her one day when we were all coming out and she was picking me up to go to dinner at my parents'. She immediately asked who she was and if she worked at my job. I told her she was new and was put on our project. For the entire duration of the project my wife was in a bad mood almost every day and would take every opportunity to tear Heather down, saying she was lanky or her nose was crooked or whatever. She is insecure about her height because she's 5 feet 4 inches and not a 6 foot tall glamazon. I love my wife's height and her petite figure and tell her this every day. She is extremely gorgeous and turns heads whenever we walk downtown. But once she saw Heather was tall and not ugly, she was convinced I thought she was hot. I kept telling her she was just a colleague and that I had no interest in her. Regardless, she would greet her coldly or not at all if she saw my colleagues. Our home and jobs are located downtown, so we usually walk to meet up with each other after work. My wife would start dressing up a lot more than usual when she'd come meet me and make a big show of jumping on me and stuff. She works at a very nice bakery and usually brings leftovers from work for us or people at my job. She always gave things out to everyone except Heather. Eventually Heather picked up on the hostility and approached me to ask about why my wife was acting that way. I simply told her I didn't know, maybe because she didn't know her as long as the other colleagues she was distant. She seemed to accept that, but would no longer leave at the same time as everyone else and would either go early or hang back. Brian, another coworker, approached me on Friday and asked to talk to me privately. He told me he had been at lunch with Kate, the coworker in question, and she had gone to pay for the food. She left her phone on the table. It lit up with a text and he saw it was from Valerie, my wife's name. The text basically said, "Did you see him talking to her today?" What did he say? Then do you think Heather is going to stay at that job long? When Kate came back to the table he asked her if that was Valerie as in my wife. She got a deer in headlights look and said, "Oh yay. We text sometimes. We're friends." He said he thought it was weird because she put her phone in her purse without even checking the messages he had asked about and wanted to go. I went home and I snooped on my wife's phone. I know it was wrong, but I had a feeling that if I asked her she would deny it or become defensive and not show me the phone. There were weeks worth of texts that basically were little reports on what went on at work. If Heather talked to me, what we talked about, did she hug me goodbye, did she touch me at all, did I laugh at her jokes? Did the guys think she was hot, did I join in with them, did I look like I was flirting? Kate was also apparently talking up Valerie at work to Heather. She made sure to mention often we were married, how great Valerie was, how long we'd been together. I even read one that said I told her Val works in a bakery. I bet if anyone tried to steal her husband she'd just chop them up and bake them into a pie, haha. Which was pretty fucking creepy. A lot of things started coming together then. Heather was much more distant lately, she seemed hesitant to say bye at the end of the day. We used to talk casually like everyone else at work, but now she would just say hi and bye mostly. I've been sitting on this information all weekend. Today at work I could hardly look at Heather for shame of it, and I couldn't look at Kate for my disgust. I haven't been able to approach my wife about this because I just don't know how or what to say. I feel frustrated and very much weirded out. I feel gross too, like I've had my every move watched without knowing it and as if just talking to a coworker is doing something wrong. I haven't talked to anyone else about this, not even Brian who first mentioned it. I don't know what to do from here. I don't even know what this means for our relationship. It feels like something big has changed because I haven't been able to look at her the same way and all my interactions with her since Friday have been kind of forced and faked. I need to talk to her and figure out what to do. Any advice would be appreciated. I feel very lost right now. Update 1. I was very much overwhelmed by and grateful for the support. On to the update, took the general advice and confronted Valerie and used therapy as a non-negotiable term. So Tuesday when I posted I saw Kate at work and bluntly said, "You don't need to report on me today or any day after this. I'll be talking to my wife after I'm done today." She got this blank look on her face and said she didn't know what I meant, but I noticed her hanging around significantly less than usual after that. I did my best to focus on my work, but I asked to go home early because it was just impossible with everything looming ahead for me to concentrate. I went home and texted my wife that I was home early and I needed to talk to her when she was done work, so to please come home right away. I got a bunch of "what's going on? What's wrong?" texts, but just kept telling her I'd talk to her at home. She got home and I got into it right away. Told her I knew about the texts with Kate, about the spying, the harassment of Heather. She was mad at first and kept adamantly saying she did nothing wrong, and if I had nothing to hide, why did it matter? I told her to please not play me for a fool and outlined all the things her behavior meant, like lack of trust and sheer vindictiveness. I brought up the consequences like my damaged trust and drama in the workplace. I also brought up how my job could be at risk because of this. She made a point to say they couldn't fire me without also removing Heather, as she'd say she was being inappropriate towards a married man in the workplace and Kate would back her up. That brought us to a heated argument and it ended with her crying and me yelling. She started asking who the fuck is Heather to you that you give so much of a shit anyway? And derailed into this whole thing about me caring too much about someone I claimed meant nothing to me. I don't want to get into too much detail because this would be extremely long, but the conversation was a good 5 to 6 hours long. It ended with her agreeing to go to couples therapy and individual if the couples therapist so deemed it. She apologized to me a lot and admitted she had been acting out of jealousy and anger towards Heather. She asked if I wanted her to apologize to Heather in person, but I said no, I didn't want there to be more drama. I watched as she texted Kate and told her to stop and that she was sorry for dragging her into it. She gave me the password to her phone for transparency, but I told her it was pointless, as if she really wanted to continue, she could just delete the texts before I saw them or change the name or whatever. I told her I expected her to keep her word to stop, because if I got any indication that this was still going on after our talk, that I would separate from her and file for divorce. Yesterday morning things still seemed tense, but it was to be expected. She still kissed me before going to work and we had a normal text conversation on our commute. I get to work and Kate apologizes to me and I accept it, but tell her our work relationship from here on out is forever changed and there's no going back from it. I tell her that beyond work conversation, we have nothing else to talk about. She accepted it and went on to start the day. Lunch rolls in. I ask Brian if he'll let me buy him lunch and thank him for telling me. We go to have lunch and he asks me if I've heard Heather put in her request for a transfer. Apparently on Tuesday when I left early, Heather asked why I wasn't at my desk because she had brought over the week's project booklet and had seen me there earlier. Kate of all people told her I had gone home to deal with personal issues. When Heather asked if everything was alright, Kate told her that she hoped so because I don't want to see someone come between Valerie and World Sionimad's marriage. There must have been a bit more to the exchange because Heather went all the way up to our boss's boss and asked for a transfer to a different department. I feel extremely embarrassed because without a doubt I feel like that guy now in the office. I know Brian isn't a gossip, but of course people will ask why Heather transferred, and without a doubt it will eventually get out. People who used to talk to me casually probably will stop. The women of the office will feel as if they need to keep their distance. And I feel so ashamed that I can't even approach Heather to apologize for the stress this must have caused her. I doubt she even would want to see my face at this point. So yes, wife has agreed to counseling both couples and individual, apologize to me, all those things. But the damage is now done and I feel like complete shit about work now. I guess I shouldn't have been so naive to think that just fixing this with my wife would make everything else go away. Update 2. I did the thing I was dreading and went to HR first thing the very next morning. I printed the texts and brought my own phone with the photos I took of my wife's phone so they could see I wasn't fabricating anything. I asked for a private meeting and sat there with sweaty coffee hands while our HR manager, Alyssa, read through a few screens and then just looked at me like, okay, we need to handle this. She asked me to walk her through a timeline, what I'd told my wife, what I'd told Kate, and whether Heather had ever approached me directly about this. I told her Heather only once asked why my wife was being distant a while back and that it had gotten progressively weird since. Alyssa told me they were going to interview people and loop in legal because of that pie comment, which I didn't really clock as anything beyond creepy until Alyssa pointed out it could be construed as a threat. She also asked me if my wife had ever come into the building not as a visitor. I said not that I knew of. She told me I needed to avoid direct contact with Heather unless it was required, and if it was required to keep it documented and in the open. She also told me not to confront Kate again, that they'd take it from here. They moved fast. By lunch, our director pulled me into a little glass-walled conference room, shut the blinds, and told me they were reassigning some pieces of my workload temporarily so I wouldn't be on anything with Kate. 5 minutes later Kate was escorted past the room by another HR person. Not a dramatic escort, no box of stuff or anything, but enough that it was obvious they'd pulled her. I felt like I was crouched under a table waiting for the building to stop shaking. HR also asked me if I wanted them to send an apology from me to Heather so it would be clean and formal, and I said yes because either way my face right now is gasoline on a campfire and I didn't want to make it harder on her. Alyssa drafted an email, ran it by legal, and sent it from a generic HR box with my name on it. 3 lines, simple, apologizing for distress caused and acknowledging it wasn't her responsibility to manage my marriage, and that steps were being taken to prevent further contact. I didn't expect a response and didn't get one that day. Home was rough. I told Valerie I'd gone to HR. She went very quiet, not yelling, which somehow was scarier, and asked why would you do that to me? I said, to be crystal clear, I didn't do anything to her. I told her I did what I had to do to protect my job and the people I work with because I can't have my marriage creating a hostile work environment. She started crying and asked if I understood how humiliating it would be for her if anyone found out. I said I didn't know what to tell her because she'd already been willing to humiliate Heather with the rumor mill. That spiraled into this beautiful loop of if you loved me you wouldn't side with outsiders versus me saying if you loved me you wouldn't put me in this position. We called a ceasefire and just waited for our first couples therapy appointment. The therapist we got into, Dr. Myers, is one of those people who can look at you for 2 seconds and you feel like you've been read. We unloaded the basic outline. Valerie owned up to jealousy and said she thought if she could control the variables, her phrase, it would make the anxiety go away. Drive. Myers asked her what variables, and after some dancing she admitted she's had my location on Find My on her phone for over a year and checks it when I get nervous. That wasn't a conversation we had ever had. I had given her my location once when she was driving back from her mom's at night and I never turned it off. That one punched straight through me. Dr. Myers wrote some notes and then asked if Valerie had ever physically come by my office without a reason. She hesitated and said twice she'd parked on the street and just watched the exits when I was on that month-long project, because she wanted to see the vibe. I think I actually laughed when she said vibe. I had to get up and stand in the corner for a second because I didn't know what else to do with the adrenaline. Dr. Myers recommended we separate our phones, not in the legal sense but in access. She told me to remove location sharing and told Valerie that if she wanted to prove she could step back, she needed to tolerate the discomfort of not knowing where I am every second. Valerie agreed, teared up again, said she knows it's not healthy, and then looked at me like she was waiting for me to tell her it was fine and she wasn't a villain. I couldn't give that to her. We also set homework. She has to start individual therapy this week, and we have to put written boundaries around work. No texting anyone I work with. No showing up at my building. No vengeful jokes. Dr. Myers made her write it down and read it out loud. Later that day, HR looped me back in. Heather had formally requested the transfer and it was granted effective next week with her desk moved immediately. They also told me Kate was on paid leave pending investigation. I felt sick and relieved at the same time. I went to grab water and ran into Brian, who just gave me one of those chin lifts. He told me he told HR what he saw and showed them the text he'd seen at lunch that first day. He said there was one thing I needed to know and asked if I wanted to hear it now or later. I told him now. He said, weeks back, Kate had told another coworker at drinks that if Heather wasn't around, Val wouldn't be so worried, which the coworker thought meant Kate wanted Heather out. That coworker had already told HR. I just stood there holding my cup. Then, I got an email from HR with a short reply that Heather had sent to their apology note. It was polite and formal, but it had one line I can't stop thinking about. Please inform, my name, that I do not hold him personally responsible for my discomfort, but I am requesting that his spouse not contact me or appear at the workplace building again, as she has attempted to find me on social media and sent a message from an unidentifiable account. HR asked if I knew anything about that. I didn't. They included a screenshot Heather provided. It was a brand new account with no posts, following 12 people. The message said, I hope you're being careful with your flirting. Some people are not as nice as me. There was a pie emoji. My vision went white for a second. Valerie swore up and down she didn't do it when I showed her. She said it must have been Kate. I asked for the password to her fence accounts and she gave me what she had. Nothing there. For the first time it crossed my mind that there could be more than one person doing this or that Valerie was willing to lie to my face. I didn't say that out loud. I just said HR would be handling it and if anything like that ever happened again we were done. That night I couldn't sleep in our bed. I took a blanket to the couch. At 2 a.m. she came and sat on the floor and put her head against my side and said, I am so scared you're going to leave. I told her I was scared of who she was becoming around me. She asked if I wanted her to quit her job so she could be home more, which was so far left field I didn't even know how to answer. I told her no. I told her I wanted her to do the hard work of figuring out why she thinks control equals safety. The following day, word was clearly moving through the office in a weird, muffled way. People were nice to my face in that brittle, careful way. One of the older women I respect the hell out of stopped by my desk and told me, in a voice like a school librarian, that she was sorry about the mess and that she hoped I was okay. It meant more than I let show. A lot of eye contact got short. Heather's desk was already empty. On my way to the elevator at 5 I saw her by the freight lobby with a box of plants and a friend from her new team. She looked at me for a split second and then gave me a small nod. I nodded back. We didn't speak. It was weirdly more merciful than an apology would have been. Meanwhile, HR asked me to come in again. They'd interviewed Kate. According to Alyssa, Kate admitted to texting Valerie daily but said Valerie blew things out of proportion. They showed her the pie message screenshot and she said she didn't send it but added, Valerie makes jokes like that all the time. They asked her if she had any issue with Heather professionally and she said no, but she didn't think Heather was team-oriented, which is corporate for I don't like her. They told me, again, to keep my head down. Less than 24 hours later, Kate resigned. Rumor is she took a role at another company across town. HR confirmed only that she chose to leave during the process. There was no email announcement, just her name gone from the org chart. Therapy session 2 was worse and better. Valerie talked about an ex when she was 22 who cheated on her with a taller coworker. I know that sounds like a cliché, but that's literally what she said. She said after it happened, she promised herself she'd never be caught off guard again. Dr. Myers told her that promise is what's killing us right now. At one point, Dr. Myers asked Valerie if she had ever asked Kate to flirt with me to see how I'd react. Valerie looked horrified, then embarrassed, then admitted she'd told Kate to be friendly and see if he opens a door, which she maintained was not flirting. I had to put my hand over my mouth and count to 10. I asked her, so you were going to test me? And she said, no, I was trying to see if I could trust you. I said that is literally the definition of a test. Dr. Myers cut in and told her that if she wants to trust me, she has to risk it without proof. That felt like the entire point of everything and also like a brick I couldn't pick up. I checked our shared iPad for the first time in months because after the location thing, my brain went into detective mode. In Safari there was a private window still open. Searches like how to record at work legally state and can a spouse be banned from a building and how to tell if a girl at work likes your husband. There was also a hidden photo album with screenshots of Heather's public IG, my company's tagged photos, and 2 blurry shots that looked like they were taken from across the street of our main entrance. I took pictures of the screen with my phone. When I asked Valerie about it, she put her face in her hands and said she was collecting proof so I wouldn't be gaslit if something happened. I don't know what I expected her to say, but hearing that word in that context made me feel like I was going to throw up. I told her I was going to stay at my brother's for a few days to get some air. She begged me not to. I picked up a bag anyway. I told her I wasn't leaving the marriage, I just needed quiet and space and maybe to sleep once without waking up at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling. Being out of the house made the work part easier. I could go in, do my job, go to the gym after, and not sit in the stew. Brian and I grabbed a beer one night and he told me, that people actually respected that I went to HR myself. He said, man, it's not that you're that guy. It's that the situation made everyone tense and then you actually handled it like an adult. It meant more than it should have. The next afternoon, Alyssa from HR popped by my desk and told me security had flagged something. The vendor list for a catered meeting the following day included my wife's bakery as the dessert provider. My stomach bottomed out. She said there was nothing wrong with my wife's business delivering per se, but given the situation, could I ask Valerie not to come personally? I texted Valerie and asked if her boss could send someone else. She sent back, I'm not even on that shift. Don't worry. The next day, I was walking past the conference center and I saw the bakery van pull up. Valerie got out. She was wearing her work jacket and a cap and had a clipboard. She saw me immediately and froze. I just stood there staring at her. She started with, we had a call out, like that would make it fine. I said, quietly, you can't be here. She said, I'm literally dropping pastries. Security approached because they'd been told to keep an eye out. They were polite as you can be when you're telling someone to check in at the loading dock and not to enter the building proper. She got flustered and said, I'm not doing anything wrong, which is true in the broad sense and not true in every other sense. I walked away because I could feel my face getting hot and also because anything I said in that moment would have been the wrong thing. 15 minutes later I got a ping from HR asking me to hop on a call. They documented the incident and asked me, again, to reiterate to my spouse the boundary that she is not to enter the building unless she is official vendor staff and checked in at the dock, and even then, that she should not seek me out. I said I understood. That night, I told Valerie I can't keep doing this ping pong. She apologized for showing up and said she genuinely had to go because her coworker called out. I believe that part. I don't believe she didn't realize what that would look like. I told her we're at a line. She cried. I cried. We went to bed on opposite ends of the planet. Today, Kate's resignation hit the internal directory for good. Heather is officially on a different team 2 floors up. My director told me they're putting me on a longer project that has nothing to do with the old pod and that they appreciate how I've handled a delicate matter. I went back to Dr. Myers alone for a solo appointment. I told her I don't know if I'm staying married. She told me I don't have to decide this week. She told me to watch what Valerie does, not what she says. We have another couples session tomorrow and Valerie starts her individual therapy next week with someone Dr. Myers referred. There's no bow to tie this with. I feel like my life has been dragged out into the fluorescent lights and I'm trying to put it back in order, one object at a time. I keep thinking about how easy it is for this to tilt into a story where I'm the guy who let his wife blow up a coworker's job, and I don't want that to be true of me. What I can say is I'm trying to do the uncomfortable, boring, grown-up stuff. I showed my work to the people whose job it is to handle it. I told my wife I won't live under surveillance. I'm keeping my head down and doing my job and sleeping on a twin bed in my brother's spare room while I figure out whether the person I married can be the person I need her to be again. That's where I am. Update 3. The bottom fell out twice this week in 2 different directions. Work first because that's where the ground keeps shifting under my feet. HR wrapped their investigation and called me in with legal. Alyssa had that folder she carries when something is formal and said they were closing the matter internally with Kate's resignation on record and a written directive to security regarding my spouse. They're issuing what amounts to a trespass notice for Valerie, not a police thing unless it's violated, but an official letter from our company that she's not to enter the building or any satellite floors unless she's a scheduled, checked-in vendor, and even then she is not to come looking for me or any team member tied to the complaint. Procurement also put a hold on using her bakery for internal events for the next 6 months to avoid the appearance of a conflict. I sat there looking at the word appearance. I asked if this was going to get me flagged for anything and legal said no, but they needed a clear paper trail in case anything else happened. I went home after that and told Valerie. She crumpled when I got to the bakery part. She said her boss had been excited when our company started ordering from them because it's good money and good word of mouth, and now she's going to have to explain why it's paused. She asked me if I could just tell them we're okay now. I told her we're not okay, and even if we were, this isn't about what I think is okay. It's a policy and a boundary. We stared at each other for a long time with the oven timer ticking in the background. She said she felt like I was punishing her. I said I felt like I'd been in a slow-motion car wreck for months and I was just trying to stop the spinning. I went back to my brother's after dinner. I've been running late nights at the gym to keep from doing the anxious scroll. I left the gym on Wednesday and my phone buzzed with a notification I've never seen in my life. AirTag found moving with you. I thought for a second it was going to be somebody's AirPods or something because I've seen headlines about that, but I clicked it and it mapped a little dotted trail that matched my car from the office to the gym. There was a button to play a sound. I hit it and stood in the dark parking lot feeling like an idiot for thinking this was going to be some weird glitch. It chirped. Not loud, not a squeal, just a faint cricket noise somewhere very near me. I opened the trunk, pulled the liner back, nothing. I checked my backpack, nothing. I ended up on my knees with my phone in one hand tapping play and my other hand feeling around the spare tire well like I was looking for a secret lever. The sound got a hair louder when I leaned over the passenger side rear wheel. I opened the door and went flat on my stomach with my face on the floor mat and it got louder if I put my ear to the seatback. There's a little flap in the back of my seat that lets it fold down. I slid my hand in and my fingers hit tape. I peeled off duct tape and pulled out a white circle. Someone had scratched over the speaker holes and it looked like there was a pinhole drilled in it. I just sat there with it in my palm and my heart doing that hot squeeze thing like when you miss a step in the dark. I took a picture of it in my hand. I took a picture of where I found it. I put it on the passenger seat and drove straight to HR the next morning with it in a sandwich bag like evidence in a bad procedural. Alyssa didn't say oh my god, but she said it with her eyes. Legal joined again. They told me to file a police report, even if it was just online, because if someone's tracking me, they want a case number attached to it that exists in the real world. I filled out the non-emergency report at my desk with sweaty hands and got a number back 30 minutes later. Security pulled the parking garage footage to see who had access to my car in the last couple months. They're checking my badge swipes too. It's surreal to sit at my computer reviewing spreadsheets while, somewhere else in the same building, a guy is clicking through footage of my dumb sedan and my dumb habits of leaving right at 6:12 every other night. I didn't tell Valerie immediately. I wanted to get into the therapy room with a professional between us before I said the words I couldn't unsay. We saw Dr. Myers that afternoon. Valerie started out with a lot of I know and I'm trying, and Dr. Myers stopped her and asked for specifics. Valerie said she'd had her first individual session and they talked about abandonment schema and some jargon that sounded like a diagnosis without being one. Drive. Myers let her talk for a bit and then asked her to list anything she'd done that I might not know about that is relevant to control. Valerie said she'd already told me everything, and Dr. Myers said, try again, more slowly. I pulled the bag with the AirTag out of my backpack and put it on the table. She didn't deny it. She covered her face with both hands and made this sound that was half groan, half cry. She said she bought it months ago after we started doing that big project, and at first she kept it in my gym bag until my phone pinged her that I'd found one and she took it out because she panicked. I didn't remember that. Maybe I didn't know what it was. Maybe I swiped away the alert without reading it because I was in a rush. She said Kate told her you could put it where the phone wouldn't notice as fast and sent her a YouTube video about disabling the chirp. She said she taped it in the seat because you never fold down your seats. She said she only checked it when I was scared, which makes no difference to me but seems to matter to her. She kept saying, I know it's wrong. I told her I felt insane. I told her I don't know how to share a kitchen with someone who taped a tracker into my car seat. Dr. Myers said, very calm, that what Valerie did is not jealousy, it's surveillance, and that if we want any chance of salvaging this, we need a formal separation with legal guardrails so that the emotional chaos doesn't dictate the next move. We talked about a structured separation, which is apparently a thing where you lay out in writing where you live, what contact is allowed, and what constitutes a breach. It felt less like my marriage and more like we were co-founders who needed a new operating agreement. Valerie asked if that meant I was leaving her. I told her I already had. I was sleeping in a different zip code. I was just trying to do it with dignity. She asked if I was sleeping with anyone else, which was like being asked if I was a cartoon character with a suitcase and a knotted handkerchief. No. The next day, I got an email at my personal address from a law firm I had to Google. It was a cease and desist on behalf of Heather. 4 paragraphs informing Valerie to stop contacting, tracking, surveilling, referencing, harassing, or making comments that could be construed as threatening. It named the pie comment. It referenced the burner message with the pie emoji. It copied HR's generic box and my personal email for awareness. I forwarded it to Valerie without commentary and then sent a separate text that said we needed to funnel everything through the therapists and our temporary agreement going forward. She called immediately. I didn't answer. She texted that she understood and that she was mortified. She asked if she could send Heather an apology through HR. I told her to run that by her therapist and to stop trying to fix this with words. Later that afternoon the security guy, a quiet ex-military type who says everything like he's giving you directions, came to my desk and asked for my keys for 20 minutes. He went down to the garage, came back up, and handed me my keys and another sandwich bag with a second tracker inside it. This one was wedged in the foam under the trunk liner. He said, we found a second device. Likely same purchaser. I had to sit back in my chair because my legs got light. He said they'd be including it in their report and that he'd send me the camera footage they pulled that would interest me, which is the most polite way anyone has ever said, you are going to see something you don't want to see. I showed Dr. Myers the second AirTag in our next couples session. Valerie didn't try to talk around it. She cried so hard she hiccuped. She said she bought both at the same time because they came in a 2-pack. She said she didn't think of it as tracking at first, she thought of it as knowing if I was safe, which is the kind of logic that makes you realize you've been living next to a sinkhole disguised as a field. Dr. Myers told her, very clearly, that if this were not her husband, this would be grounds for a restraining order. Dr. Myers asked me if I wanted to pursue one. I said I wanted to go one step at a time and not light a match in a room full of gas. Valerie started individual therapy with someone Dr. Myers recommended. She came out of the second session quieter in a way that wasn't sulking, more like she'd hit a wall and realized it wasn't going to move. She told me she told her therapist about an old pattern she had when she was younger where she'd test men to see if they'd leave, which is not new information, but the specificity was. She also told me she sent the burner message to Heather. She said she did it at 1 a.m. after scrolling Heather's public profile and spiraling, and then she told Kate the next day and Kate laughed and said the pie emoji was iconic. The word iconic made me see stars. I asked her why she lied to me when I showed her the screenshot in the first place. She said she was ashamed. I said I'm tired. I ran into Heather by accident in the coffee line in the lobby. She was with a woman from her new team and a stack of binders that looked like a defensive line. She saw me see her and I did the half step back that you do when you know you're a trigger. She nodded once, like she did by the freight elevator, and then surprised me and spoke. She said, very gently, I'm glad you went to HR. I said, I'm sorry you had to. She said, I didn't have to. I chose to. That's different. Then she ordered her coffee and left. Her friend gave me a neutral look that said, we are fine but we are watching. The smallness of that exchange did more to reset my shoulders than any of the emails. Work adjusted around the mess like an organism. My director gave me a travel assignment for a client 2 hours out that will keep me out of the building a couple days a week through next month. He framed it like an opportunity. I took it like a life raft. Brian and I have developed a little nonverbal handshake from across the hallway that means you good? And as good as I'm going to be. People have stopped doing the brittle politeness thing and gone back to regular awkward office polite, which I will take. At home, or rather, at not home, my brother is being a saint in that older brother who doesn't talk way. He set up his old PS4 in the spare room and pretends that's what I needed. He knocks once if he's making dinner and then leaves a plate on the counter even if I say no. He also, in the most older brother way possible, told me to get a lawyer just to know my options. So I did. I had a consult with a family attorney who laid out what a legal separation looks like in our state and what an order of protection would entail if it came to it. I haven't filed anything. I'm not there yet, but seeing the steps laid out on paper did something to my brain that I couldn't do myself. Put it in boxes that have labels instead of feelings. Valerie and I wrote down the terms of a 30-day structured separation with Dr. Myers in the room. She stays at our apartment. I stay at my brother's. We have 2 scheduled phone calls a week, 1 FaceTime on Sundays, no unannounced visits to work, gym, my brother's place, or our building's lobby. No trackers, no passive location sharing. Any logistical stuff goes through a shared Google Doc. If she violates the work boundary, I file for legal separation and an order of protection the next day. We both signed it. It felt weirdly like signing a lease. 2 days into that, security sent me the footage. It was grainy garage camera angle, timestamp in the corner. You can see my car. You can see Valerie's coat and the shape of her hair under a beanie. You can see her pull up behind me in my blind spot when I pulled in, wait 30 seconds, get out, look around, open the back door like she's getting something I forgot, and then crouch and reach into the seat. You can see her do the trunk. It's new enough that we both still had masks on in the footage. She works in food service, she always keeps one in her pocket. She moves like she's done this before. I watched it through once and then closed the window and sat there with my palms pressed together until they hurt. I forwarded it to Dr. Myers and then, after staring at the blinking cursor for 5 minutes, I forwarded it to Valerie with one line, please do not respond. We will talk about this in session. We talked about it in session. She watched the laptop with both hands clamped on her knees. Dr. Myers paused it and asked her to narrate what she was feeling. She said scared. She said ashamed. She said 7 different versions of stupid. Dr. Myers said the behaviors have words: hypervigilance, compulsive checking, covert surveillance. She said none of those justify the behavior, but they explain the compulsion behind it. She told Valerie that the apology she keeps trying to offer is not for me right now, especially not for Heather. It's for a future version of herself who doesn't feel the need to crawl into trunks. That sounds like therapy speak and also like the only thing that has made sense in 2 weeks. The bakery thing blew up in its own small way. Valerie's boss called me, not to excoriate me, to his credit, to ask if there was anything the bakery could do to avoid being blacklisted by association. I told him I can't talk about work stuff and he shouldn't be calling me about this at all. He sighed and said he was sorry, that Valerie is a good worker, that he hoped we figured it out. She told me later he took her off deliveries entirely. She said she felt punished on every front. I didn't tell her I felt like the side of a house after a hailstorm. There was one moment this week that felt like the oldest. My brother took a call outside and I was sitting on the floor folding laundry I'd finally lugged over from the apartment. Valerie FaceTimed for our scheduled call and she was sitting cross-legged on our couch with the stupid blue knit blanket over her knees. She looked exhausted, no makeup, hair in a messy knot. She held up a little spiral notebook and said, "Dr. Myers is making me do a thought log." She read me one, about seeing a tall woman at the register at the bodega and immediately feeling like she had to compare herself. The thought log said, trigger, tall person. Thought, he prefers tall. Feeling, fear 9/10. Behavior, urge to check location. Alternative thought, he chose me. Feeling, fear 6/10. We sat there in that quiet that isn't comfortable but also isn't war. She asked if I'd come home for dinner one night next week if her therapist agreed and if we could do it early and daytime-ish so it didn't feel charged. I told her maybe. I told her I still want a marriage with the person I married. I told her I don't know if she's in there, but that I'll keep looking for 30 days. The last thing, and it's small and somehow not small, Heather's email to HR came through again because she amended it. She added one line at the end, "I will not be filing any action at this time, as long as I am not contacted again." I closed my eyes and let that sentence sit on my face like a wet cloth. Then I got back to work. I finished my deck for the new client. I packed for an overnight. I switched off my location sharing and put my phone on the charger. There is nothing to wrap this with. It's the same fluorescent room, the same objects. The difference is I'm not pretending the humming sound is the lights anymore. It's the whole building. I'm going to keep doing the boring, uncomfortable things and see if the hum gets quieter. If it doesn't, then I'll do the next boring, uncomfortable thing and file the papers. For now, I'm counting days and paying attention to actions, not speeches.